Grand Rising, everybody. I hope you guys are having a great start to your week so far. We are back here again. Another crazy story. First things first. Make sure that you guys are also remembering that we do have the Royal Lockbox that will be on the 20. I just looked at it. One moment, y'all. The Royal Lockbox will be on the 27th. Okay. The Royal Lockbox will be on the 27th. We only have one letter in so far. If y'all want to keep the Royal Lockbox going, okay, we have to get the letters in so that I can see that there is interest in the show. So make sure that you get them in. Once again, you can write about anything, your family, friends, loved ones, job, your career, whatever you feel like you may need a little bit of advice on. Yes, the 27th. Thank you, Miss Dolores. So please make sure that you get them in. All you have to do is email savagerealtyent@gmail.com in order to submit your letters. Okay. Alrighty, guys. So let's get into it. Can you guys hear me well? Because I cannot hear myself for some reason. But yeah, let's get into it. All right. Now this is another crazy case. And honestly and truly, I'm surprised that the child in this situation has the strength to even do what she is doing in these coming days, which is getting on a witness stand and basically saying how she was victimized. Hey, Evangelist, hello there. How are you? She is older now, and she has a lot of clarity and understanding about her victimization, which is totally different than what it was years prior when all of this happened. Okay. So let's get into the deets and the updates or the final outcome of this case. I will let you guys know. But as of right now, it is currently in trial. Okay. So this all started when a family had a barbecue. Okay. They had a barbecue and they had, of course, family, friends, and loved ones there. Okay. Now, some point in this time, the child in this situation, she had fell asleep after the barbecue. Okay. And then that's when things went a little bit left. So around 2:30 a.m., the child was asleep on a recliner. She was in her pink pajamas as well as wrapped in a blanket. Okay. Now, she says that she had woke up from her sleep and she realized that she was being carried. And she thought that her grandfather was actually the one that had picked her up from where she was laying at in an effort to move her to a different bed. Okay. She says that that's when she noticed that she wasn't actually being taken to a bed, that she was being placed into a vehicle. Okay. A vehicle that is owned by this man here. Okay. Why is this thing? Come on, pop up thing. 1 second, guys. I don't know why. There we go. By this guy here. Okay. She says that he picked her up while she was asleep and took her to his vehicle in the middle of the night. Okay. Now, there were multiple stops that happened throughout this drive where it was captured on a neighborhood surveillance that they were at the gas station. You can also see him getting out the vehicle to check the trunk. And then he also stopped at his girlfriend's house. Sorry, guys. He stopped at his girlfriend's house. Okay. Now, while at the girlfriend's house at some point in time, meanwhile, in the vehicle at some point in time, it is also alleged that he had climbed in the back seat of the vehicle, and that's when the child was essayed right there in the vehicle. Okay. Where he also attempted to manually, with his hands, to choke her, allegedly. 1 second. 1 second, guys. I don't know why. As soon as I press live, something always go left. So she says that during this time in the vehicle, he climbs into the back seat. He then essays her right there. Okay. He chokes her, put a bag over her head, and then he also used a rope as well to attempt to put that around her neck too. And she tried to push back, she tried to kick, she tried to fight, but of course, this is an overgrown man. And at the time, she was about 7 years old, is what they're saying. So she was fighting a grown man. Of course, that wasn't going to end well. So around 4 o'clock a.m., he then drives to the I-290 overpass, okay, out there in the area in which they live. And the child says that that is where he comes into the vehicle, he takes her, and he throws her into the lake over the overpass of the bridge. Okay, basically throwing her right over it. All right. Now she's in the lake, she hits the water, and then she then was able to get the strength to swim 100 yards in order to get her some help. Okay. So she had swim towards a housing area. Now, of course, she still had the blanket around her as well as her pajamas, but she still was able to make it. Once there, she then was able to come in contact with someone that lived in the community in which she swam to. So this person then gave her some new clothes as well as assisted her with calling the authorities. Okay. Now, that is where the authorities came, and she did ID the person in which she says took her from her grandparents' house. Okay. Which was the family friend and the person that I just showed you guys. All right. Now, the investigators, they did say that they did see some ligature marks around her neck, as well as some other things, as well as that they were able to gather right there from the scene. Now, when it comes down to the charges, at first he was given some initial charges, and this was due to the forcible essaying that he had took part in, unfortunately, as well as some assault on a child as well. And I'm kind of like minimizing the charges because I cannot say exactly what he was charged with, but it was along the line of the essaying. Okay. Now he did plead not guilty, and he did post a $50,000 bond, but in 2018, he was then he was later released, and there was some more information that needed to be gathered in regards to the evidence and how he had connections to her and things of that nature, as well as the fact of you have a child who is 7 years old who is still trying to understand what went on with her. So, of course, some of the information did not come out at that particular moment during the investigation. So it wasn't until years later that there were charges that was added to him because she began to be a little bit more vocal and a little bit more understanding about her victimization and how to communicate that with the authorities. So they put on more charges. Okay. Now, it was was provided to the grand jury, which allowed the investigators to up his charges, of course. Now, when it comes to her testimony, she did say that she was abducted while she was asleep. She was put in the car. She was strangled and things of that nature. And she's saying all of this on the witness stand as recently as last week. Because, of course, this case took a little minute. Because, yes, they did have him for the initial charges, but the later charges, it kind of made the trial be pushed out a little bit longer because of the evidence and how they were able to process the evidence and things of that nature. Okay. Now, there also is some evidence there that he says that, well, his girlfriend says that when he stopped at her house while he had the young girl in the back seat of the vehicle or whatever, it is said that he had contacted the girlfriend and told her to delete any of his online searches in which he had took part in previous to this actual case, this actual situation. Okay. Which leads us to the whole premeditated theory. Because if he took some time to research things or what he was doing online, it could possibly show that he thought this out prior to actually partaking into the actual crime. Okay. Now, when it comes to the defense, they're basically directing this towards some credibility. Okay. Credibility as well as DNA. So the defense is calling on the account of an unbelievable inferences of absence of DNA directly connected to the suspect. Okay. There is no DNA here for that. Okay. And the defense, they do challenge the timeline as well in this, trying to determine, did he even ever make it to the girlfriend's house? Was there any searches and things of that nature? Basically trying to build a reasonable doubt. Now, there are some elements of this case that are a little bit tricky, because when the investigators decided to look at the DNA, what came out was a little bit odd. It's not odd in a way to where it cannot happen, but it's odd in a way that when the investigators finally do get a piece of evidence, it is not this man. Okay. The evidence that was found on this child's DNA was actually her father, and it was found on her clothes. Okay? Now, which has now created some form of reasonable doubt because many people are wondering how would the father's DNA get on her personal underwear? Okay. Now, the family says that it happened due to washing clothes, them living together, of course, due to them transferring clothing and things of that nature throughout the house. And that's how the DNA got on her belongings. Okay. Which is opening up the door for the defense. They also add to this is that it's impossible for the father to be the suspect because the father the victim herself says that her father has never harmed her in any way. So there is no reason that the father's DNA should be looked at as him possibly being a suspect. They're pointing it directly to the man and that they say did this man here. Okay, she immediately had identified this man right after the crime. Okay, and I'm gonna be honest. Yes, this child may be 7 years old, but she knows who assaulted her. She knows who was in that vehicle that night. And with him having the opportunity to contact the girlfriend to tell the girlfriend not mean to delete for her to delete the online searches in the history, it leads some form of a belief that he had something to hide. Because why do you need a reason to delete anything connected to this entire situation besides the fact that you're hiding something? Okay, i.e., you possibly were planning to do something to this child the moment that you stepped into her presence at the cookout. You already knew what it was. And I would not be surprised is throughout this investigation that they possibly found other reasonings that he would do this, i.e., grooming possibly could have been a thing that was possibly missed by the family, but identified throughout the investigation. Could he have planned the DNA evidence from the father at the scene? I doubt it, because if we think about it like this, she was removed from the vehicle, okay? Swam all the way 100 yards to someone's house, okay? The only way that he can plant the father's DNA is if he was at the father's or her home initially, where she lives. Not her grandparents' house, but her house. Because that's the only time that he would have to plant this in her belongings. Because there's no in between, i.e., her going back home. You know, the only way that this DNA could have gotten there is initially from her home where she resides with her parents. That's it. That's all. The question is how. Okay, that's the question here. Even with the family saying that she has never been harmed by him, she said this herself as well. Okay, now I know that and I've seen people comment and say, well, how does she know that she wasn't assaulted in her sleep? Well, me being someone that kind of like thinks of things in multiple different directions, if she was able to wake up out of her sleep by being lifted up off of a couch or wherever she was laying, thinking that she was being moved to a couch by her grandfather, it would lead me to believe that this child will automatically wake up if something is going on with her, i.e., her father. Okay? She would be able to identify that that is the person that did something. If she woke up this time, especially during a situation where she's being removed and taken to outside, I would think that she would wake up if she's being touched or anything in her sleep at night. Could it been a one-time instance? It could have been, especially if we get down to the verdict and they determine that he's not guilty. You know, have there been instances where a person has been assaulted and they don't realize it? Yes. That's actually academically researched, that a person can be assaulted and not even realize that they were until years later. Sometimes it doesn't always take drugs or, sometimes people just sleep in a way to where if they're touched or something, they wouldn't even wake up. Some people sleep that deep. Let's just be honest. So there is a reasoning to use this for the defense as a some form of reasonable doubt that he is not the person that actually did this. Especially if you're sitting in front of jurors who are saying, wait, not only was her father's DNA found on her belongings, but her father's DNA was found on her belongings after she swam 100 feet through water. I mean, 100 yards through water. So this alone, if you're gonna have someone on the jury that thinks like that, it can create some form of reasonable doubt that he is not the actual suspect in this entire thing. Okay? And then if you understand essaying and victimization, then you also understand that someone can be victimized in their sleep unknowingly. So the defense are doing a really great job of laying some form of reasonable doubt here. But the question is, are they going to be able to prove that this man is actually the suspect? I think it's not going to go down to the DNA. It's going to go down to what was in his history that he wanted to delete with the girlfriend. I think that is actually what's going to weigh heavily on this. Now, she did immediately identify him right after she was captured, assisted with the neighbor. And it was a consistent story, okay, across the years in which she had to recite this story, okay, from the abduction to the assault to the overpass to the lake to the swim to the house with the witness who helped her. It has all remained the same. Now, you also have some witness text messages as well as surveillance, and then the map drive timeline as well that they do show with him possibly identifying his travel locations and to's and fro's of where he was trying to go. Now, does this in the totality help to possibly help the defendant, or does it lack proper evidence? It does lack proper evidence due to the simple fact of his DNA not being there. And if they are saying that he had essayed her in the back seat, then you would think that a rape kit was done right after she was there to determine if his DNA was discovered on her person. Okay? I would think that if a kit was done immediately after, that they would be able to find something to connect him to this. But once again, we also have to think about the 100-yard swim, on how DNA would have been able to survive that swim. Okay? So that is something that is very much important. That 100-yard swim is a lot when it comes to trying to gather evidence. Deleting the information will be key. Yes, deleting the information, the text messages and things of that nature of him trying to get her to the girlfriend to delete histories and things of that nature, as well as whatever internet searches that he's possibly did too prior to the actual crime itself. Now, we also have to see, is there the transferring of the transferring of DNA credible in this situation, i.e., the father's DNA? Is this credible? Okay? Is this a credible finding? Have the courts taken the time to have some form of scientist or whoever, forensics, come in and say that in order for the father's DNA to be found on her belongings, because she lived in the same home, how long would that DNA last in her belongings? Okay? Would that DNA be washed off through this 100-yard swim? I hope that they're going to have some form of forensic scientist or someone to come in and explain that. Because myself, I did take some time to research on whether or not the DNA can be transferred in your clothing. Yes, it can, of course. But can it last 100-yard swim? What would be the reason that this said DNA would be found on her belongings? And what type of DNA was this? Was it sperm DNA? Or was this just hair? What specific DNA was this? Sweat? What was this? A lot of questions need to be answered, for sure. It's a lot of questions in this. And I'm going to be honest, after reading over the case, there is a clear, reasonable doubt. Clear. The defense have done a great job with that. Now, what's next in this? The witnesses, okay, there are 54 witnesses in this case. So 9 times out of 10, they're going to have to break down, and they possibly have some form of forensic specialist to be able to identify, but also explain how this DNA survived on her belongings and how did it possibly get there. Okay? You have the homeowner who assisted her, the parents, the grandfather, and multiple other witnesses that are going to be testifying in this. Now, the police department, they're also going to be doing so. State troopers, medical personnel, forensics. Potentially, there could be some digital information when it comes to some form of last pass history that they do have. Surveillance from the custodians as well, the parents. Now, what's expected in this, of course, is your cross examinations with the medical causation when it comes to the ligature marks and other explanations in regards to the DNA. Okay? um now what's very what's something that's very interesting about this case, okay, is she told a story in the initial part of the investigation. But years later, after more investigating and after more detail came forward, like I said earlier, he was charged more. I would also want to know, if I was a juror, what caused the holdup in these additional charges at the beginning? What information was lacking in the beginning that caused for them to come back up years later to up the charges or to add additional charges? What was the causation behind that? Was it she began to wake up to her victimization to be able to give more details? Because that happens a lot in victimization. Sometimes, if you guys don't know, victims, they will remember things, right? Very surface based things. But over time, their memory begins to help them identify other things as well. And 9 times out of 10, that is what these specialists are going to explain. Why was it that years later there were upped charges? Due to details of the story being a little bit, provided a little bit more within the investigation. They're 9 times out of 10 going to explain that from the victimization standpoint, that sometimes they can forget. So please don't think that just because she did not remember at the initial, it does not mean that it was not true. Victimization simply works that way. Sometimes they may remember the person. They may remember, what that person had on. They may remember the most traumatic parts in the very beginning. But days, years, months later, sometimes they add, okay, well, they did choke me, but right before they choked me, they did this. And yes, they choked me. Not only did they choke me, but they used this to choke me. Yes, he did the essay and climbed in the back seat, but also when he was in the back seat, he also did this along with the essaying. That's how it worked when it comes to victims trying to remember what actually happened to them. So don't take that from her simply because of that reasoning and that timeline gap of why there were additional charges later. Okay? And it's normal. Okay? Now, we are in the very beginning stages of this. As I said earlier, there's tons of witnesses, and this is a trial that we're going to be watching. Okay? When the verdict do come forward or any hot key points that do come out throughout this week, something tells me by the end of this week we should have a verdict. I will be letting you guys know. So just make sure that you stay tuned to my Instagram, my Facebook, my TikTok, so that you guys can stay updated in the midway to verdict, okay? And understand what truly has come out. And any testimonies from specialists or forensic or anybody, even the parents, because I really want to get a understanding from the parent standpoint on why their stance is, when it comes to this whole DNA transfer, on what their thoughts on it. Now, they've been very tight on the DNA got there from, washing clothes and, transferring clothes throughout the home, which is normal. It's normal. But I really want to see what the state's belief is behind that. when it comes to the DNA. And I also want to get an understanding of the longevity of the DNA after this 100-yard swim. And if they were able, or why they were not able to find DNA from him after the crime, right after, when it came down to the whole kit per se. Because as you guys know, when an essay does happen, a kit is then offered or given to the victim, which then helps them to identify the essaying, but also sometimes DNA. What stopped that? Was the 100-yard swim what stopped the DNA? I think it possibly was, but we're going to find out more, okay? Also, if you guys haven't done so already, we already do have the cases for this week already posted. For Thursday, I have not decided as of yet, just in case, but if I don't decide anything, I will be covering the Georgia cult on Thursday. I'm just going to see if anything does come out, that we might possibly need to discuss more, okay? But if you want to stay updated on the Georgia case, the Georgia cult, I just now posted a video from a victim who spoke about what was going on within the cult, and that is posted on my TikTok. I don't know if you guys are following me on there as of yet, but please make sure that you do so, as there is content that is posted there all throughout the day. If there is any cases that I do cover that you guys do not see an update from on my TikTok, my Instagram, or my Facebook, it's because 9 times out of 10, there is no update, and I'm just waiting for one. But any in-between updates can be found on other places, okay? Write your letter. Yeah, write your letters too, Savvy. Write me a letter in to the Royal Lockbox. What do I write about? My life. How's life going? Is that what I write about? What do I write about these days? My life is so bland. It's no longer exciting. I could do a status update on my life. How about that? On how my life is so I'm approaching 40 in December. Um I'm living a very peaceful. I haven't cussed no one out lately. I'm doing good, guys. I haven't read anyone for filth. I'm becoming a woman. How about I do a letter about womanhood and how I'm really becoming a woman, and how drinking tea and laying around watching Snapped is really the best part of my life. I'm telling them to write you. I'll write. I want to write in though. I'm going to write in. How about I write in? I'll write in, and you guys can tell me what you think. I don't believe that. What? That I haven't cussed nobody out? I haven't. I haven't cussed anyone out. I haven't been on Bigo to cuss nobody out. I only cuss people out on Bigo. You guys don't do nothing to make me cuss you out. I haven't cussed nobody out. And I only have to cuss people out on Bigo. Bigo is an app where you have to do that. Like, you have to cuss people out. Also, if you are new, follow me on the TikTok side of things. I need you guys to understand something, okay? Hi, welcome if you're new here. My name is Savage Royalty, okay? I do know that you guys see my news and stuff, and I talk nice, and seem really calm and things of that nature, but please understand, okay? I'm becoming a good girl. Yes, please understand that tell us about the 3D plant. This plant isn't real. This is fake. All my other plants, they are deceased, except for the ones that's in my garden. I did get cucumbers, string beans, okay? So yeah, except for my garden, but all house plants besides my uh what is it? Avila, what is it? The cactus looking one with the skin stuff in there. That one isn't deceased, but that's one doesn't need a lot of water. But my ones in my garden are doing good. And I don't think it's because of me. I think it's because the earth is more so doing it, because yeah, all the ones that's in the house is dead, but the ones outside are fine. Both of them could have assaulted this child. That's true. But we're going to be watching this case to see how it boils down. I knew one. I knew one. You knew they were dead? Why are you aloe? Is that what it is? Yeah, that aloe vera plant, that one is what is upstairs. It's doing good. I've had that one since the other ones, but that's the only one that survived, the aloe. And I use that one sometimes for my I make my own body butters and I use it for my body butters. But you guys have a great day. Tune in to all of my other. Oh, if you're new here, please make sure that you are subscribing. New content, new stories every single day. You can also subscribe to savageroyalty.com and you can become a member as well. Just download Spaces by Wix, type in Savage Royalty ENT, and put in code 859TEA to become a member. Until then, get your letters in, and I'll see you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you for watching True Crime with Savage Royalty.